Welcome back to Cooking with Texas Chevy. Today we will be making homemade pork tamales. We're going to start off with about a 10 to 10.5 pound pork shoulder / butt, 3 cloves of garlic, 1 full onion, 1 jalapeno seeded, 1 tomatillo, and 1 serrano pepper, also seeded. We're going to start out with the onion and we're going to slice this up. We don't want too many small pieces because it's going into the crock pot, which will be in there 12 to 14 hours. So make sure they're decent sized slices. I will be de-seeding the jalapeno and the serrano pepper. You don't have to, but I would recommend it because they will get pretty spicy. I will just be cutting the tomatillo in quarters, and I'll just de-skin the garlic cloves. For the jalapenos, I just broke them apart. You can slice them if you want, but they just need to be in large chunks in your crock pot. Alright, now we're done with that, we'll be throwing the pork butt / shoulder into the crock pot for the next 12 to 14 hours. We'll be flipping it in 6 to 7. But to make sure it's done, we'll be temping it. We want to take it out about 190 so we can sit and rest for a little while before we start slicing it up. Now that it's done, there's 2 ways you can get this pulled apart. Either you can use a fork if it's really hot and it just came out, or you can just grab it by your hands and just start ripping it apart. I use the ripping method if it's not too hot. So prior to making your masa, I start soaking the husk. We want them to soak for about 2 hours, and we're going to rinse them really well prior to making the tamales. Now with the meat done and pulled apart, let's start making the masa. We will be using gluten-free masa and 3 tablespoons of salt, 3 tablespoons of garlic powder, 3 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, and 3 tablespoons of paprika. For these tamales, I'll be using heart-healthy, cholesterol-free Maseca corn oil. So we'll pinch about mid-bag and dump that into a large bowl. Make sure it's large because you're going to be moving stuff around a lot. Now we'll add all the seasonings, and we're going to blend these together by hand. Everything we're doing right now is by hand, so you're going to need an extra person to be able to dump the oil and the broth into this mix. So remember that. Just make sure there's no large clumps and all the seasonings spread out really well throughout the masa. Now with that all nice and blended together, we'll be adding 2 cups of our corn oil. And we're going to add this slowly, about a half a cup at a time. Now with the corn oil blended in really well with our hands, we're going to be putting in the pork broth. If we don't have enough for 2 quarts of pork broth, we'll be adding chicken broth to substitute for that last little bit. We're going to want our broth warm, so if you waited till the following day to start making your masa, we're going to put it on the stove and warm it up, and then add about 1.5 cups at a time slowly. You may not use all 2 quarts of the broth. We're looking for a peanut butter type consistency, so if you reach that prior to the 2 quarts, you can stop and start making your tamales. Now let's get it set up in a different location where we have our meat, our corn husk, and our masa ready to start making our tamales. Now with the corn husk, we're going to be covering about 1/2 to 3/4 of the length of the husk to 3/4 of the width of the husk. Once you put the meat in, leave a little bit of room to the side you brought to the edge, because you want to roll that over and push it into the opposite side of the masa. Based on how big you make your tamales and how much meat you put in is how many tamales you're actually going to make from this amount of masa. So I can't really give a exact estimate, because I like to make my tamales big, so I'm going to make not as many as usual. But it still makes about 35 to 40 tamales. We will be using a large tamale cooking pot. You can get it from your local retailers. I got mine from H-E-B. It'll take 2 to 2.5 hours to steam these tamales. About midway through, you sort of want to add a little bit of water to the edge to make sure you don't run out of water. After the 2-hour mark, we'll take one tamale out and let it rest on the counter for 5 minutes and taste it. If the masa is undercooked, let it cook for an extra 30 minutes. Thank you again for watching my video. And remember, you don't have to do it pork, beef, chicken. You can make bean and cheese. You can make egg, potato, and cheese. Just, hey, enjoy it. Make it with the family. Please subscribe and like my videos. And follow me on Instagram at Cooking with Texas Chefing.